Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this presentation on working remotely in the age of COVID-19. My name is Todd. I'm happy to serve as our facilitator today, and I am quite grateful for your attention. I have worked remotely and exclusively for more than 10 years. This is, to some degree, second nature to me, but the nature of this work creates some unique challenges that many of you, employees and supervisors alike, are starting to encounter given this new normal. I hope today's presentation provides a framework for navigating this challenging time and gives you some things to think about over the coming weeks, months, and well into the future. Taking a quick look at our presentation highlights, I will provide some background on the coronavirus. We will discuss some of the implications for managers and employees alike. I will review some pillars of success to working remotely and doing so successfully. We will explore some future considerations, and finally, I will wrap up with all of my sources and resources for your continued reading and research. Let's take a quick look at how we've gotten here. The first case of the coronavirus appeared in China in late 2019. This presented as dozens of cases of pneumonia of an unknown cause. The first death was reported in China on January 11th. On January 23rd, Wuhan, China closed for business with 570 people infected and 17 deaths. On January 30th, a week later, the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency. In February, we saw the first death of a victim of the coronavirus that occurred outside of China. This occurred in the Philippines. On February 11th, the World Health Organization names this disease COVID-19. On February 13th, nearly 15,000 new cases were reported in China, diagnosed through lung scans. On February 21st, South Korea closes schools and community centers. That same day, the virus appears in Iran. On February 23rd, Italy starts to lock down the country. Latin America reports its first case a few days later, and we start to see a spike in cases in Europe. On March 11th, many European visitors are banned from the United States, and 2 days later, the U.S. president declares a national emergency. On March 15th, the Centers for Disease Control recommends no gatherings of more than 50 people. A couple of days later, France declares a national lockdown. On March 19th, China first reports its day of no new infections. On March 21st, American companies start to ramp up production of medical supplies. And within the next week, Britain locks its country down, India locks down, U.S. infection numbers surpass China. And on March 26th, the U.S. unemployment claims soar to 3.3 million, highest initial claims in our history. As a result, millions are working worldwide, remotely, most of them, for the first time. I promised a little self-introduction. My name is Todd. Prior to my time in higher education, I was the president and chief executive officer of a national healthcare human resources firm. I have 25 years experience in management, many of those years in the C-suite, in the areas of healthcare administration, human resources, information technology, and consulting. I've been working in higher ed and leadership, management, and teaching positions for more than 10 years. I serve as an instructional designer and a faculty member, and I have extensive training and development experience. Educationally, I have an MBA in healthcare administration, a master's of education in organizational leadership, a master's of science in information technology, a graduate certificate in human resources, and I'm currently a doctoral student working on a doctorate of education. My dissertation is entitled Traditional Faculty Resistance to Online Higher Education. My contact information is there on the screen. I'll provide that as well a little later in our presentation. I wanted to talk about some of the implications for managers. This is certainly not an all-inclusive list, but managing productivity is important. We have businesses to run, and we need to figure out ways to run those businesses in this new environment. We should be asking ourselves, however, do our productivity expectations prior to the coronavirus, do they still apply in this new environment, and we should make changes as needed. It's also important that we consider how we are going to replace face-to-face supervision. In my experience, most employees want and need to be led. How do we do that in this new remote environment? What tools are we going to use to make sure that employees feel connected to us as supervisors? We need to ensure that employees have the necessary tools and resources to do their job in this new remote environment. And I think that really starts by asking our employees what tools and resources they believe they need. We need to pay close attention to communication and try to avoid communication missteps. Clear, concise communications matter today more than ever. There are security and privacy issues that we need to address, and my guess is that when all of this is over, we will be looking very carefully at those policies and procedures. It is important that we figure out new ways to collaborate, as that is an important part of us being productive in an organization. Finally, we need to consider training. We need to be careful not to overwhelm people with training these days, but at the same time ensure that they know how to use the new tools and resources that they may find themselves using in this environment. Finally, I think it's really important for managers, for leaders to establish the rules of engagement. How are we going to collaborate? What training needs to be delivered, and how important is that training? How are we going to supervise employees, provide support to employees, demonstrate exceptional communication skills, demonstrate our own emotional IQ so that we can provide the kind of support that our employees will need. There are certainly implications for employees as well, and there's some overlap here. Employees are going to need a high level of communication, and they're going to need to understand how they can communicate in this new environment to get the things done that need to be done. Employees may also need to find themselves needing to take more control of the training and being able to do some research to figure out how to use some of the new tools that they may be facing having to use. We need to focus on time and task management. And as an employee, it's important that, again, we continue to get the job done. It's also important to remember that many times remote employees end up working more hours than those employees that are on site. Managing that time, setting a schedule, sticking to a schedule is important. Our workspace matters. I think it is important that employees have a dedicated workspace in their home, whether that be a formal office or a card table in the corner of the dining room. A dedicated workspace is helpful. And new technology. We may find ourselves using new technology, and we may find ourselves not having access to the same kind of technology that we're used to. So, for example, many times employees in an organization may have multiple monitors, but they now may be using one monitor, and we know that multiple monitors increase productivity. There are certainly going to be a lot of changes in this new environment. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, just a little bit of levity, regardless of what you see online. When you do work from home, you actually need to wear pants. I treat this like a job. I get up in the morning, I shower, I shave, I brush my teeth, I get dressed for work, and I go to work. Considering the technology is important, we need to keep the technology relevant and simple. We need to focus on function and communication and avoid whiz-bang. Everyone has their favorite technology. Now may not be the time to roll out unnecessary technology and can, quite frankly, be very wasteful. We also need to consider how we can use technology to avoid isolation and to, again, collaborate with others. Things like Zoom, Teams, Google Hangouts. All of these are opportunities to use technology to help us connect and avoid isolation. We should be focused on process and productivity. What do we do? How do we do it? Does that still work in our new environment? What changes do we need to make, and how are we going to measure our success? Security is a big issue. Some of these things are listed here on the screen, and again, this is certainly not an all-inclusive list. We need to focus on access. Our employees obviously need to have access to things, but privacy still matters. What controls are in place? What policies are in place? Do we have recovery plans in place? Are we conducting risk assessment? You know, one of the most valuable resources we have is our workforce. And if we can train our workforce to recognize potential security threats, things like source awareness, threat awareness, and policy awareness, we then have an army of people who can help to protect us and our stakeholders. Community matters, health matters, community perhaps matters more than ever. We need to amp up the communication and work really hard to support each other. Try to keep the energy level high. I strongly recommend getting outside safely, exercising. Now may be the time to pull that exercise bike out of the garage and start to use it. We should be socializing with caution, of course, and again, using technology to do that. And stay away from the pantry, stay away from the fridge. They're not your friend. Focus on eating healthy. Finally, I want to just mention some future considerations. I suspect when all of this is over, we will be very focused on revising policies and looking back, taking a quality improvement look on what has happened, how we dealt with it, and how we can improve moving forward. Looking at things like access, policy, process, perhaps conducting remote working drills, looking at the technology and the tools that we're going to use, formalizing the rules of engagement, formalizing or expanding our security protocols. All of these things are important. And like I said, I suspect that many organizations will be taking a close look at these in the coming months. Ladies and gentlemen, my phone number is there on the screen. My email address is there on the screen. I really do appreciate your time. As promised, I have provided all of the sources and resources for the information that I have put together here today in the event that you would like to read more about this. Most importantly, thank you for your time, and please take good care of yourself, your family, your loved ones during this very challenging time. Good luck.